I am the director of the Criminal and Juvenile Justice Program, and the goal is to work to reduce the over-reliance, in our opinion, on incarceration here in the state of Maryland, and to do so in a way that will reduce incarceration rates and also the social and economic costs that it results from the high incarceration rate. So we are a foundation that supports nonprofit organizations who are working to change policies in the state of Maryland to make sure that the criminal and juvenile justice systems are fair, that young people and adults who do not need to be incarcerated or not, that alternatives are provided to them. And we do so by looking at the system from arrest through reentry. Yeah, when we opened our doors in 1998, Baltimore City was typical of urban settings across the country, which is what attracted our founder to Baltimore. The school systems, many young people were dropping out of schools. There was high drug addiction rates here in the city, high crimes, high incarceration rates. And so, we came here and believing that this is a small enough city where if you invest large sums of money here on people who are interested in reforming the system, that you could actually see change. And we believed that when we got here in 1998, and it's turned out to be very true. The Baltimore City residents were not happy with the state of the city at that time and partnered with us to work to change things here. The criminal and juvenile justice system is really tough to reform, but we, like other cities, Baltimore City is beginning to realize we believe that the way that we're doing business is not working, have been doing business over time is not working. So we have been working really closely with the school system, as you've heard about the school to prison pipeline. And, again, as I shared with you, we wanted to deal with the juvenile justice system in particular from arrest through release. And we found that many young people who were in school and misbehaved were not only suspended, but they were also arrested, because Baltimore City is one of the only jurisdictions in the state that has its own police department within the schools. And we found that many of the young people were being suspended for things that were typical, when we were growing up. You get in a fight, you typically go to the principal's office, you do detention, and then you go back to class. But many young people were being suspended and also arrested for simple assault. And so we worked really closely with the school system to make sure that there were policies in place so that young people were treated fairly and consistently district-wide. We helped them change their school discipline policy. We supported programs that were willing to go into school and serve as an alternative to suspensions. So after doing that for a number of years, we started in a little before 2006, and as of last year, the number of suspensions, which were 26,000 in 2006, dropped to 10,000. And so, we saw that if you combine changes in policies, services, you'll see a difference in the way that young people are treated. And now we're working with the school system to find alternatives for school-based arrests, because we want to stop young people from being pushed into the juvenile system. And so that's something that's up and coming. And hopefully, just now as we are working with the school system, and we looked at the data and saw that many young people were being arrested for things like disorderly conduct. And just by seeing that, the police department has started changing their practices and referring those young people more to community-based programs instead of to the juvenile justice system. And we've already seen a drop in the number of school-based arrests. So if you focus on the policy, the practice, and help policymakers and agency officials change the way that they deal with young people, you will, at least we've seen, you will be able to reduce the number of young people who end up in the system. You hear of feeder schools, so there are elementary, middle school, and high schools in one neighborhood, and one school feeds into the other. With the school to prison pipeline, it's a similar phenomenon on some levels. So you have young people who are in the system, in the school system, they misbehave, and once they are suspended, in addition to being suspended, they are also arrested, so they end up in the juvenile system. Once you get into the juvenile system, it's really difficult to get out. You have documents in the system. The next time you get in trouble, oh, well, we've seen this young person before, even if it was for something really minor. And each time that the young person gets involved in the system, they get deeper and deeper, and the consequences are worse and worse. And then finally, the young person may get involved in something that's a little more serious, and they're pushed up to the adult system. So there's this pipeline that develops that research has been able to show, at least in Texas, directly from schools, a connection between schools and a young person's trajectory into the criminal and juvenile justice system. We suspect that is happening here in Baltimore. We do see the connection between schools, behavior in schools, as I shared, and arrest. But we're trying to stop that. We think that we are on the verge of stopping that. That zero tolerance policies, you may have also heard that, where, that there's a swift and harsh response to behavior, no matter how minor it is, that is really does not exist in Baltimore City anymore in the school system. At least we've worked really hard with the school system to get rid of that, and so now we're working really hard with the city at large to do the same, and we're doing that by really trying to help the state to change the laws that are in place now that require the automatic prosecution of young people as adults.
How do you change history? You can change history by walking and marching. You can change history by speaking and teaching. You can change history by taking a stand or taking a seat. But the best way to change history is when you becomes we. We tore down that wall. We marched for equality. We made sure that love knew no boundaries. Now you can become we right here in Vancouver. We can end HIV. We can change history. It begins with a test. Testing today can range from a blood test that'll inform you in about a week to some locations where a prick of the finger gets you a result in 60 seconds. Diagnosing HIV early changes everything. It prevents the virus from attacking your body, and it prevents it from spreading through our communities. All each of us has to do is step up and take a test. Changing history is that simple. Testing centers are available throughout the city, or just ask your doctor at your next regular visit. And if your doctor offers a test, say yes. It's just the responsible thing to do. Then, share the word. Tell people that HIV treatment has changed. Tell people that testing has advanced. Tell people that the entire approach to HIV is different now. Let them know that by choosing to take a test, we can all end HIV. This is a fact. We are so close. But to become we've got to have you. We need you to do your part. We need you to share the word, take the test, join the movement. End HIV. Change history. Learn more at itsdifferentnow.org.
Anxiety has affected me since really the beginning. I was dealing with this all by myself. I was totally isolated. Nobody knew.
Everybody loved Shelby. She was a straight-A student, but a year ago, my sister lost her life to suicide.
I know that my girlfriend struggled really hard with telling people she had this issue. She could hardly tell me. It hurts me because I feel like a lot of my friends have struggled with not being able to admit that they're dealing with these issues.
The last school year, there were 4 teen suicides that happened in Palo Alto. That really sent our entire community into a shock.
Help us mind our future.
Let's tag it, tweet it,
Share it.
Instagram it.
Let's snap it.
Me importa el futuro.
I think that social media is a very powerful tool for spreading these issues in a way that's approachable and also really powerful. These personal stories can become almost anthems or just rallying points for other people who feel the same thing.
I did attempt suicide and I tried to end my life, but I bounced back. I'm really thankful that I saw that post because they might not think that they're helping me, but I really appreciated it so much.
Shelby, I guess, never really felt that comfortable coming out and saying to us, I've been really sad. I think, there's something I need to do here.
If you take that step, take that initiative to reach out, tell someone that you're struggling, it can make the biggest difference.
I'm starting the conversation. I'm posting about mental health.
I'm ending the stigma.
We're socializing hope.
I like that.
Me importa el futuro.
Together, we can bring change to minds.
I think ending the stigma is the only way to start the conversation and have people feel comfortable enough. They can talk about it. They can seek help.
Show us what you're doing to start the conversation and end the stigma.
Good morning.
Hey, Ricky.
Yeah. I like what.
Oh, what's up, man?
Good morning. Good morning. Good night.
Hey, I just want to let you know that Ricky took his life last night.
I can't do this anymore. I can't do us. No, what's wrong with you? It's not anymore.
You are dealing with pain, anger, a heaviness. It feels like there is no way out. It seems like you are in this by yourself, battling alone. But you are part of one Army family, shoulder to shoulder with a community there to get you through these hard times. There is no shame, no guilt in seeking out help. So if you are struggling, feeling depressed, or even having thoughts of suicide, it is time to talk to someone. Your Army family is committed to finding you the strength and hope you need to rebound from adversity. Because, above all else, our most essential resource is you.
If you get in a fight and you're arrested, your arrest record will stay in place. I mean, the charges may be dropped, but you'll continue to have a juvenile arrest record. Now, juvenile records are sealed, so, the impact of having a juvenile arrest record, is not perfect, but it's better than having an adult arrest record. So, say, for example, you were involved in a carjacking. So and this is probably very typical. A young person gets in the car with a friend, goes to another place, and the friend decides that they want to carjack another car, and he's there. Because he's there, and they get arrested. Everybody's going to get arrested, right? And so both young people will be charged with carjacking, and that person would be charged as an adult if he or she is 15 or 16. Certainly when there were the higher number of arrests in the city, both adults and youth were arrested more. I think that, we had organizations here that monitor that, such as the American Civil Liberties Union, and sued the city, in fact, for those arrests, and the number of arrests started going down, even before the lawsuit settled. So we did begin to see an increase in juvenile arrests, but the juvenile arrests have gone down substantially for the past 10 years. And so, there was an impact there, but, the aggressive prosecution of young people as adults, it, in our view, is not due to an increase in arrests, because we know that juvenile arrests have gone down. It's just this theory, this thinking that a young person who may commit a serious crime should be treated as adults, which is really inconsistent with the history of the treatment of young people in the juvenile justice system. And, and it's very ineffective. Data shows that it's extremely ineffective to treat young people as adults, because young people are not adults. They're not big adults, they're children. They're not, their brains aren't fully developed, they are impulsive, and need more services when they get in trouble. And we're hoping that the state will follow other states and move back to the notion that young people should be treated different from as adults. They should not be automatically charged as adults, and we should try to provide them the treatment and the services that they need. In Maryland, there's a law that has a list of the offenses that if a young person age 14 between 17 is charged with that particular offense, then he or she can be automatically charged as an adult. And it includes your more serious offenses: murder, rape, robbery, some assault, aggravated assault, carjacking. And so, under state law, that is what happens. There's also a way that young people can be charged as adults. They can start in the juvenile system, and the juvenile court judge will make a decision that, the young person just will not be amenable to treatment in the juvenile system, and they could be pushed up to the adult system. The juvenile court waivers, they call them, are not as common as the automatic waivers, the automatic requirement that young people be prosecuted as an adult. The police and the prosecutor can decide that a young person is going to be charged, with this aggravated assault or armed robbery, and that because of that charge, you're automatically sent to the adult system. So, again, there's that automatic piece by state law, and then juvenile court judges can make a decision on their own that they could send the young person up. So it's really a combination. There's two ways you can end up in the adult system. Typically what's decided, well, based on research, and recent research in fact, 68% of the young people who are automatically charged as adults end up being either sent to the juvenile system after the judge looks at all the facts and decides, looks at, assessments to see if the young person would respond to treatment and services in the juvenile system. They're sent back to the juvenile system, or they're released. The charges are dropped. So most of the young people who are charged as adults in Baltimore City end up not being convicted as adults. And so, which begs the question, why are we charging them as an adult in the first place? Why not just begin them in the juvenile system, which is the question that we're asking policymakers, and we're asking them to really just do what makes sense, do what the data is showing us. Young people sit there because they're waiting. They wait on average of 3 to 4 months to go before the court to argue that they don't belong in the adult system. It's called a transfer hearing. They want to have their cases transferred back to the juvenile system. So on average of 3 to 4 months, they're waiting to have that hearing happen in court. And why does it take so long? The prosecutor may ask for a postponement, the defense attorney may ask for a postponement, the court may not be ready to hear the case because the judge has too many cases. So delays will cause a young person to sit at BCDC for a long time. So that's part of it. The other part is that the court system, it has so many cases, which is another aspect of having a delay in the case. So and it really is bothersome because these are young people who are in an adult facility. They are supposed to be kept separated from adults, and the individuals, the staff over at the jail try really hard to separate them, but it's difficult. They have to go to school during the day, and they have to pass adults, and so it's difficult to keep them separated, and they're exposed to very circumstances that you would not want your young person to be exposed to individuals that you wouldn't want them to be exposed to. And they are hardened very often by the experience. So, you know, that's another reason why we think it's so important that young people are not held in an adult facility and actually placed and treated as children and placed in a juvenile facility as they're waiting trial, regardless of how they're charged.
No. No.
No. No.
No. No lupus.
No lupus. If we're going to say no to lupus,
We need to know lupus.
Lupus has completely changed my life.
Lupus is one of those things that takes over somebody's body and you don't know anything about it.
It's just unpredictable, it's tricky, confusing.
There's certain things that I can't do, but I still get up every morning and do it.
It's really a cruel mystery.
Lupus can impact any organ in the body, any organ.
It was attacking my kidney. Some people it's the brain, it's the heart.
I'd gone into stage 4 kidney failure, which sent me into respiratory failure, which almost made me lose my life.
When I was first diagnosed, that's when it really kicked in, just knowing that there was no cure.
I really felt like maybe I might not be able to make it through this.
We don't look like we have the disease, and I think that's also part of the problem.
You can be sick even though you don't look sick.
That is one of the cruel aspects of it, is there sometimes people don't believe you.
Lupus does not discriminate. It can affect men, women, white, black, older, younger.
I've had lupus for 10 years.
I am 17 years old. I am 11.
We've got to find a way to get through this.
The Lupus Foundation of America is a great organization because they're getting people out there, letting people know what it's all about.
And by knowing more, we'll be better able to help and unlock the mysteries that do surround lupus.
There is something we can do. There is hope.
Let's take this moment and turn it into a movement.
End the confusion and end lupus.
There is hope. We just have to get involved. I haven't given up.
I challenge you to know.
No.
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 No lupus. Go to lupus.org/no and help solve this cruel mystery.
No 2 days are alike. So every day, you prepare. For yourself, for those you love, for whatever the day may bring. Being prepared is a part of who you are. But in the case of a disaster, preparation isn't always front of mind. In an emergency, when help and resources may not be available for days, being prepared is more important than ever. It's up to everyone to be informed about what types of emergencies might occur where you live or visit. Knowing the best responses for your personal circumstances is the key to maintaining your health, safety, and independence. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency and how a personal support network can assist you. Build a kit that contains the specific things you need to survive for several days. Food and water, medication and supplies, as well as any important documents you may need. Being prepared is a part of who you are, and disaster preparation is no different. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Be informed, make a plan, build a kit, get involved. Ready.gov/myplan.
So on page 124, you guys can find some practice questions, and I do suggest that you all take a look at these because this test next week is going to be a doozy. We will definitely be solving for x, so x squared plus 3 equals. Marshall, would you come up here and solve this problem for the class?
I can't.
And why is that?
Because I have a boner.
Oh.
I have a boner.
Okay.
I have a boner.
I have a boner.
I have a boner. I have a boner. I have a boner. I have a boner.
I have a boner. All right, no, boys. Come on, sit down. Class is not. Sit down. Well then, Megan, do you want to come up to the board and solve the problem? I have my period.
I have my period.
I have my period. Answer is 7.
I have my period.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop. Learn how at activeforlife.ca.
I didn't want to talk about it earlier. Why would I want to seem like this sad sack? Those are all the lies that I told myself. It's like, oh, if I talk about this, even professionally with my job, if I talk about this, people won't want to watch me. It's not important enough. And even now, as I'm hearing myself saying all those things, like, wow, man, I really wish that I would have spoken out earlier, because there's nothing like being able to shine a light on those secrets. Those secrets kill. The secret of keeping all that to yourself and putting on that mask that'll eat away at you daily. It ate away at me daily. It's difficult for men in general, I think, because of just the way that we're raised. You feel any of the negative emotions or that dark cloud settle on you, and you feel like you need to cry out or speak to someone about it. No, I'm not gonna do that because I'm a man. What kind of man would I sound like if I told somebody, hey, I'm so sad. I'm cripplingly sad. I can't get out of bed. I feel empty. Help me. Psst, I would be some sissy, I'd be soft. That's what you're taught. That's what you were programmed. And that's what kills us. So in speaking about it on ET and being honest, folks have come out of the woodwork. People that I haven't heard from in years, complete strangers, a ton of mostly on Twitter and on Facebook and social media. That's been an amazing gauge of all the love, and so many people, it's echoed the exact same sentiment. Thank you so much for speaking, because I felt that I couldn't.
The Baltimore City Detention Center was built in the 1800s. It's old. I mean, you know, it's your old-fashioned jail. It's one of the oldest jails in the state, probably one of the oldest jails in the country. And so, should it be shut down? Yes, no one should be in that facility. It's hot in the summertime, it's cold in the wintertime, it's, you know, it's not safe for, it's not appropriate conditions for the staff or the detainees who are held there. Does that mean we need to build a $100 million facility just for youth charged as adults? We don't think so. We think that there are juvenile detention facilities statewide that if we have policies in place that make sure that only young people who present a public safety risk are held there while they're waiting for their trials, that there would be enough room for the youth who are charged as adults to be transferred to juvenile facilities. I think that the policies that we have in place is what's making it necessary to build another facility. If we just change the way that we manage young people in the juvenile system and make sure that, you know, someone who is there for a fight, for example, a simple assault, is not being detained for 3 or 4 months waiting to go to court. They're released in the community. There are community programs that could wrap services around that young person. And that particular bed space could be used for a young person charged as adults. Also in the juvenile system, there are on average 40 to 50 young people who have gone to trial. They've been found, you know, delinquent and in need of a placement in a community-based or a treatment facility. They're sitting there waiting to be placed. If we have a system in place that puts these young people in programs in the state where they can receive services, that again also would make space for young people who are charged as adults. So we think that there is no need to build an entire facility when you have schools that need, you know, to be rehabbed and vacant homes in the city, to make an investment in a jail when there are other needs, and if you change your policy, there wouldn't be a need to build another facility. So, you know, the conditions are bad, but we think that you can move these young people into other facilities where the conditions are not as bad. I have to say that the adult system isn't designed for young people, right? So they're designed for adults. The juvenile system has age-appropriate services in place, should have it. You know, our juvenile system is not perfect, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, you know, the juvenile system in Maryland is doing all that it could do. There is room for improvement there. But young people in the juvenile system they go to school. If they need counseling services, they receive it. If they need substance use treatment, they receive it. The adult system is not equipped to provide those types of services to young people. The young people who are at the Baltimore City Detention Center, they are in school. There is a Baltimore City school on, you know, in the facility. But beyond school, you know, there are some community programs that come in and provide services to young people, but it's still not designed and equipped to provide the treatment that a young person age 14 to 17 needs. So, you know, there are services in place, but it's limited. And, you know, even correctional officers in the facility, they're used to dealing with adults, not young people. Young people have a lot of energy, you know, and need to be out and to get rid of some of that energy. And the adult facilities are just do not have the programs that an adolescent needs to develop. And youth who are automatically charged as adults have been charged with the more serious crimes. So young people who are involved in drug possession and distribution are generally charged as juveniles. But, you know, again, how do you handle that, right? So some young people who are in possession and also use, they need treatment. You know, they don't necessarily need to be, you know, locked up in a facility because they're addicted. So, you know, substance use treatment would be more appropriate. If they're charged with distribution, then the question is, well, what other type of employment opportunities can we provide young people? You know, it's really looking at the economics of distributing drugs. You know, young people do it and are often encouraged to do it because adults encourage them to do it because it's quick cash. So, you know, we have to then look at what we offer young people. You know, do we offer them employment during the school year, an opportunity to be employed? Summer employment is important. And so there are different things that we can do we believe, to address some of the drug distribution and possession charges that young people find themselves dealing with. I believe that youth should never be charged as an adult. And I go back to young people are young people. They are not little adults. They're young people. What's interesting is, you know, on the one hand, a young person under the age of 18 cannot enter into a contract. So they can't have a credit card. You know, they can't, you know, engage in any type of business transaction because they don't have the legal capacity to do so. They can't vote. Because there's an understanding that, you know, you have to be a certain age in order to really understand the importance of whatever action or transaction that you're involved in. Yet in this society, in this state, they can be held responsible for, criminal conduct. I mean, it's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense in my opinion. And so, if you're going to treat a young person as a young person for legal reasons that make sense in terms of voting and entering into contracts, the same should apply for young people who find themselves in trouble. So the position of my personal position, and I believe I can safely say the position of this foundation, is that young people should not be automatically charged as adults. That each case should be considered individually, and that's what we think a fair system of justice would look like. After 3 years, about 50% of the young people who are released from confinement end up going back into confinement. It's similar in the adult system. So, overall, the way that we are addressing crime in Maryland, in this country, is not very effective, because, the goal is once a person is convicted of a crime, they're released, you really don't want them to come back. But we're not putting in place the programs, the services that individuals need as to support them once they're released, and as they're being released, and once they are released in the community. So we're seeing high recidivism rates in both the juvenile and the adult systems. There are many success stories, right? So we have, in Baltimore City in particular, and the city can be really proud of this, that there are many, many programs in place, community-based, nonprofit organizations that serve young people and adults who are released from incarceration. And they really work with individuals to help them, develop whatever skills they need to find employment. They help them find housing. If there's a need for addiction treatment, they help with that. And these programs really hang in there with the individuals long term. So once a young person or an adult finds a job, they continue to be there to coach them through, and have really seen success. So it's not that we're not getting it right. It's not at the scale that it needs to be us to begin to see fewer and fewer people going back into the system. So it's a matter of how is the state investing its money? Are you putting enough money into community-based programs that help people re-enter once they're released from incarceration, or are you putting the money into building more facilities to house more people? So there's this balance. If we can get community services at a scale so that they can actually serve all the people who are released from incarceration, to help them not to return, then we'll start seeing an impact. So, there are some successes. We're just not at the level of support that we need to maintain, lower recidivism rates. Criminal and juvenile justice is a community problem. And it's something that everyone is going to need to really push for things. The state and local governments will change if there's a political will to do so, if there's public pressure to cause them to do so. And I think that, in order to have our government invest more money into making sure that people don't return to the system, then community members need to demand it, and need to, tell their policymakers, their elected officials, that it's important to us as a city that everyone in the city has an opportunity to be successful. And that means even people who make a mistake, are convicted, should be given a second chance. And we really need to have people make that statement, make it clearly, and basically demonstrate their commitment to it through the ballot. When they go and vote for people who are like-minded. And so it takes a partnership with city, state government, and community residents. People respond to injustices. When they see something that isn't fair, that doesn't make sense, they respond to it. I believe when you look at the state of things in Baltimore City, the state of the schools, the state of housing, the state of job having job opportunities, particularly for youth. And you look at that versus the plan to invest millions of dollars into a jail. I think people see that doesn't strike them as being justice. You know, that strikes them as being, you know, a way to just continue to perpetuate this system that wants to lock up young people, and particularly black males. And they're anchored by it. You know, whenever we talk about it publicly and have people come to different forums, they see that, you know, the first question that they'll ask is, why are we spending $1 million and on a jail when our schools need our schools are falling apart and our young people don't have jobs. So I think that, you know, the community understands. They want to know what they can do. You know, when you are dealing day by day, trying the best you can to just hold down a job yourself as an adult, as a parent, it sometimes is unclear what can be done. And I think that the community outcry that we've seen this last year has really helped individuals in this city to get involved. So we're basically saying to them, you can do something. Let your views be heard. Send letters to the governor, send letters to your policymakers. Talk about this issue wherever you go. Get on the radio, go into your communities, let people know what's happening, and you really can make a difference.
I was ready for action.
We can do it in 2 minutes.
Now, when I was in high school, I couldn't do it in 2 minutes. By the time I got to college, 2 minutes was a cinch.
I really like it when a guy can do it in under 2 minutes.
The key to my marriage is doing it in under 2 minutes.
I can do it in 2 minutes.
I can do it in less than 2 minutes.
I can do it in under 2 minutes myself, and with my boyfriend.
Each year, the Red Cross responds to 66,000 disasters.
Most of them are home fires.
Most of them are home fires.
Ooh.
I know. Whoa.
7 people die each day, on average, from home fires.
7 people.
A day.
That's way too many people.
You can save your life and your family's life.
Make an escape plan.
Make an escape plan.
Make an escape plan.
It's critical that everyone can get out in under 2 minutes.
I can get from my bedroom to my front door in less than 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes.
I can take my shirt off, pour glitter all over myself, and still do it in 2 minutes.
Called my mom the other day, told her I did it in under 2 minutes. She was so proud.
1.5.
What? There's no way.
Yeah.
Check your smoke alarms monthly to make sure they're working properly.
Smoke alarms cut your risk of death or injury in half.
Half? It's 50%.
This little guy, cutting it in half.
And if it's beeping at you, don't rip it out of the wall. Give it a battery, you know? Make it happy so it can help you get out of the house in time.
Make sure to visit redcross.org/2steps, 2 minutes.
2 steps.
2 minutes.
2 steps, 2 minutes.
Visit the link below to find out more.
Wherever it is.
Not there. Here.
America's Navy, a global force for good.
got some news today from the radio man. He spoke the words somber and as softly as he can. The world stood still and the sky opened up. I made my way to fill up my coffee cup. Then it occurred to me as the daylight sky shone blue, today's the day that Johnny met June. He waited a while, he knew that he would. He was gonna hang around here for as long as he could. The days went by, and hours idle passed. He was never sure just how long he would last. But there's not much love in a lonely room. Today's the day that Johnny met June.
Have a good summer.
You too.
Thanks.
Hey, you must be bored.
No way.
This is the guy that I was running to in the library.
You're kind of
yeah.
guilty.
Oh my God.
So you like to write on desks?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Now we're starting over, it's the place that we are. You look more pretty underneath all the stars. Love is a burning thing. Oh, how I still love to hear you sing. Oh, and everything we ever heard about heaven is true. Today's the day that Johnny met June. Today's the day that Johnny met June.
So the National Council on Crime and Delinquency, did another projection of the number of beds that would be needed for this new facility. And Open Society Institute, the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and the Department of Public Safety funded this. So it was a private-public investment in this research, and it found that unlike what the state believed it needed years ago, 180 beds, that really over the next 30 years, the number of young people who would be charged as adults would peak at 117, but would most likely be no more than 100 young people on a daily basis. So the facility did not need to be larger than 117 beds, and those beds probably would not be filled. So the state, there were also different scenarios in that report, and it said basically state officials, if you do this, then the number of beds that you needed would drop to 40. If you do this, the number of beds would drop to 0. And so what we're asking the state officials to do is look at that 0 scenario. What can you do so that you don't need any beds, any jail beds for youth who are charged as adults? And so that's what we're pushing at this point. And
what can they do?
Well, again, the law needs to be changed. That's one thing, and that's what community residents can do. They can demand that the law be changed so that no young person is automatically charged as an adult, that all young people are treated as young people and are charged as juveniles on a case-by-case basis. If a judge decides that a young person, would not respond to services in the juvenile system, then that young person could go to the adult system. But we don't want a law in place that says if you commit a certain crime, you automatically go to the adult facility. So that's what our many community organizations are pushing for. In the meantime, we want young people who are charged as adults to be held in juvenile facilities. We talked about that a little bit earlier. What the state is saying, the juvenile facilities are at capacity, they're already crowded. Well, we believe that if certain things are done, certain practices are changed, they can release young people who don't need to be detained to make room for young people who are charged as adults. So there are many things that an alliance of organizations have developed. There's an action plan in place now. The alliance of organizations presented it to the governor, And they're really working with the governor to start implementing these policies. And we think that within it would take about 3 years to build this facility. We think in 3 years that if certain actions are taken, there would be no need for the facility. So there are things that can be done, and Baltimore City residents should feel encouraged by that. The research is on our side on that. Other states have done the very things that we're suggesting that this state do. So the possibilities are there. It's just we need the political will to do it. Because your young person may just be hanging out with friends and something will happen where the police will come and, something unlawful could happen, and your child could not even be involved in what was happening, but just be present. And it could be something as serious as an armed robbery. When the police come, everybody's going. They're going to figure out, who did what later. And your young person, your child, who was really innocent, can end up over at Baltimore City Detention Center. I mean, it happens. It's pretty common, especially if it's a black male child.
Which leads to the next question I was going to ask you. Typically, the person in this type of scenario, what do they look like? What are their backgrounds?
They're African American young men, and it's particularly in this city. That's what they look like. There are some girls over who are charged as adults, but it's very few. But when you go over, I don't know if you've ever gone over to Baltimore City Detention Center, it's mainly young men, and they are young. They look like babies. I went to visit last summer. It was during the heat wave, and went to the L section, which is where the young men were held at that time. And because I'm female, they had to announce that a female was on the unit. And, I was invited to walk the unit, and, the young boys were trying eagerly to put on clothes. They were sitting there with their boxers on because it was so hot, in the facility. It was maybe 100 degrees outside and 110 in the unit. And they were babies, and I left there, and I keep seeing those young boys in those conditions, and really seeing that again, because that wasn't the first time I saw it, is what is motivating me personally and this foundation to really push to make a change, because no one should be in those conditions. No adult, no child, particularly no child, should be in those conditions. The fact that a higher percentage, that black boys in particular are overrepresented in the juvenile justice system, and the fact that they're overrepresented in the adult system has been a fact since Reconstruction. I mean, it's just been a fact. And sadly, though, I think it's a fact that's just been accepted, and it shouldn't be accepted, because there's evidence to show that black boys and girls are arrested at higher rates than their white peers, not because they commit more crimes. When you look at control for the types of crimes, they're not committing more crimes than their white peers. And so when you peel the back and look a little deeper, you can only conclude that there is some stereotyping, that's happening. There are some biases that decision makers hold about black boys and black young men. And so we really have to start looking at that. And that's not to say that, people are deliberately being racist. Everyone has their own sense. They are raised with their own sense of what the world is like, and have their own experiences and exposure to different people. So, subconsciously there may be some stereotyping going on when you look at the way that black males in particular are treated versus white males. And I think that when we get to the point where we can really sit down as mature adults and look at that and start really trying to understand that, that's when we'll start seeing a difference in the overrepresentation of black young men in the system. I think until we do that, it's not going to change. It hasn't changed over the years. Youth or youth. It's interesting. When I started my legal career back in way back when. And I represented young people who were in adult prisons and were in need of special education services, right? So they mostly were black young males, age 14 to 17. Some were very small and looked like they didn't belong there. Some were some 6'9", big, 200-pound young men. Every last one of them, during the course of my representation, burst into tears at some point. I don't know why. I don't know if at the time I was much younger, I reminded them of their sister or what have you, but I saw the child in them. And I think that if society would just stop looking at the behavior and look at the child, then they won't live in fear. These are young people who need direction. When we were younger, we did some things that didn't make any sense, but we weren't locked up. We had a community where adults, there's a woman who, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, and I had a neighbor named Miss Naomi, and every time we did something, my siblings or I did something that was inappropriate, she was at that window looking at us. And my parents knew about what happened before they got home. And I think that, we're not doing that as a community anymore, that we're not embracing all the young people in the community as ours. And I think that if we start doing that again and stop being afraid of them, they're children. If you speak to them in a way that, in a calm, loving way, they'll respond to that. If you yell at them, they're going to respond to that. And I think that we just need to start developing compassion for our young people again. I think our compassion for young people is just not there anymore because we believe the rhetoric of this super predator, that we're still trying to find that predator. He hasn't materialized. I mean, we just have to start seeing our youth, as children, and treat them that way. That was a theory that a Princeton professor developed back in the 90s, that there was this young person that was an incurable, violent young person that was developing in society, and that the only way to deal with that young person was to treat them harshly, lock them up, and treat them as adults. And that has turned out to be not the case, but everyone believed it. It was highly publicized. The super predator is going to come into your neighborhoods and just, destroy them. And, that never happened. But the rhetoric was believed, laws were changed, and now we find ourselves in a situation where our prisons are, filled with young, black males and boys, and because of that. And I think we just have to change the way we talk about our young people, because they are not predators. They are, intelligent individuals who can grow up to be intelligent and responsible adults. But we have to believe that, and we have to invest our time and energy in them so that they can become those responsible adults. If he is connected to an adult, many people do not have fathers in their lives, or, and some young people don't have mothers now. Many mothers are not in the home. But if there is another adult in that person's life who cares about them and is supportive of him and directs him to programs that are there to help him develop job skills, help him to write a resume, help him to finish school, get his GED, help him to find a job, his likelihood of success is pretty great. But all those things have to happen. If you release that young person back into the community that he left without support, without an adult who is interested and cares about him, he's gonna do his best to survive. And that may be to engage in some type of activity that will land him back into the criminal or juvenile justice system. So, the likelihood of success is really dependent upon one adult who may find an interest in that young person. It only takes one person. And I think that if one person takes on that responsibility, that many of our young people would be more successful today.